that, I get really sore eyes if I don't wear them.
Yeah, no, I do too. I do wear them on and off during the day anyway, so don't stress.
So now I look like this person, right, that wears glasses all the time, but really, truly, I wear glasses because we're on Zoom all the time.
Yeah, it's so like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So by the way, welcome to the decision table, because like we just have conversations here, and you know,
awesome.
Who would have thought we're good at talking? I know, that's what I figured. And you know us, like we've traveled, we used to travel the world, and we'd have these amazing conversations. And I just felt like one of the ways that, you know, we can figure out how to do this better, more effectively, this journey, is by having conversations. But in a lot of ways, I had amazing conversations with people across the globe, but I kept it to myself. No one else got to hear them. So I figure that one of the things that I can do right now, I can't travel across the world, but I can travel across the world by having these conversations and opening up to maybe seeing how we can do it more effectively as we continue our journey, and whatever that looks like, right, at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what this is about. And here's the other thing. One of the things that I've been doing is using a lens each month around, you know, like looking at this moment, 3 things. Because the first month I looked at, and here's the thing, because I know we haven't caught up for a while, so I just kind of update you on this. But
no, that's okay.
I'm writing 3 white papers. And so the first piece is about what I see as the need for a new approach to leadership. So that was January. That was the lens we used every time we kind of came to the table.
Yeah.
The second month is on the second white paper that I think is just so important at this point. And that is what I call the secret advantage of using the muscle of human intelligence. Mm-hmm. And so all that month we kind of focused on through that. And then this month, the lens that we're using is the third piece, which is kind of like the pinnacle of it all, really, to be honest. And that is the lens of human intelligence as stakeholders. Humanity as stakeholders at the decision table. That's kind of the third one. Okay. And really they all mix in with each other, and I'm sure we're going to be like bringing up different insights around that. But I just think the only way we're going to do this, the only way that we're going to move forward and think how to do this more effectively is having a different conversation. Now, I have to bring this up. I saw on your media post just before, because you took a little longer to come on here, I checked out something that popped up in my media.
You're going to talk about Pepe.
I'm gonna say,
Pepe
hey,
Le Pew.
Dude, it's not even around that. You said the water's gone crazy. Tell me more about
that. Cool. Let's dive in with the really easy question.
Of course. You know me.
Absolutely. Love it, Kieran Marie. I guess it was, look, you know, putting a little thing up saying newsflash, the world's gone crazy is a little bit, no, it's not clickbait, but it is a little bit of a, hang on, let's grab your attention a little bit, obviously. But I just think that in the last, well, let's call it for what it is. In the last 12 months, the world's been turned upside down with how we live, what we live. I mean, you know, there's that little virus type of pandemic thing, you know. So without having to get into that, I'm a firm believer that we shouldn't be blaming COVID for everything. You know, we had one of our last conferences only last week, and we were still sending out all our packs, and that we did a complete hybrid. So we had 30 people in the room live and another 50 online, and we had all the tech running. So it was completely hybrid the whole time, breakout rooms on tables, but also, Zoom rooms, whatever, which is really cool. So some of the packs we had to obviously send to people beforehand. And so when you actually go to, and I might go through, send all the stuff, 2 weeks in advance or 8 business days or whatever. You go to Australia Post and they turn around and say, I know you're paying Express Post. We still can't guarantee it'll be there in 8 business days time. And I sit there and I go, when I hear that, I go, why is that? And Deb actually questioned. They said, because of COVID. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're posting a pack that's 2 kilos, that you've paid an extra $7 or $8 for overnight delivery to Brisbane from metropolitan Sydney or to Melbourne, and they can't guarantee 8 business days that it will be delivered because of COVID.
Okay, just give some overseas people some perspective of what this is. In an airplane, how long does it take?
On an airplane, it's a 50-minute flight.
Yeah.
But they do, Australia Post still does truck deliveries overnight.
So in a truck, how long would it take from here?
It's like a 9-hour drive.
Correct.
So they do it overnight. So it leaves the distribution centre at 5 o'clock this afternoon in Sydney, and it will arrive tomorrow morning at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. It gets sorted and delivered at 11 or 12 o'clock. It's not that hard.
No, so even if it was a day or two, you'd go, okay, I'll give a little bit of leeway. But
absolutely.
8 days.
3 days, but 8 days, I go, really? You can't guarantee that, but you're still happy to take the extra $7 or $8 per package off me for guaranteed, 48-hour delivery. So I think that for me, I get really frustrated with that so many businesses and so many people globally are in a situation where it's the easy excuse to be able to just blame COVID. We can't do this because of COVID. And there's manufacturers that, I can't do this for 5 months because of COVID. I needed a new head to my whippersnipper the other day, and we literally got the last one, and it was on, the rest of them are on back order till September. And I think, how do you do that? Like when we respond in a pandemic to so many people in Australia were just crazy. We had the toilet paper dilemma. And I know that we're the laughing stock of the world, where we went into shutdown for 6 weeks. Everyone was still able to go shopping, but people went out and raided the stores and hoarded toilet paper, and you had to only get one thing. It was crazy, right? And I sit there and I go, all of the, the sorbents and all these places, they were able to ramp up their productivity, and within like 5 days go, okay, we're now at 300% capacity. We don't panic. Like in 5 days' time, we're going to have 3 times as much toilet paper available. Everyone's fine. But yet so many other businesses and industries have gone, COVID, we can't, and they've all stopped. Now, so I understand there's been a lot of challenges with COVID, and I'm primarily in the health and medical industry for a lot of what I do. And we've had a lot of challenges, and there's been a lot of pivots. But I mean, I like to look at it and go, I don't think we really should be pivoting too much, because I think pivots are slow, and it sort of shows that the model was a little bit stagnant. If every business has to pivot, I go, well, that probably tells me that you weren't agile enough. So I've tried to really take this with our clients on board straight up and lead them, because people are desperate to be led during crisis, and basically turn it into, you shouldn't be pivoting your business model unless you desperately had to. But in our industry, it's more about being more agile. And I've tried to tell people, I think it's about having more agility actually creates more stability.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Is it a case of that we just didn't build in many industries that it wasn't built agile? And so we built it in ways that have been systems or processes that's really quite archaic.
I think a lot of people just got comfortable and in many respects lazy. And I don't mean that derogatory to anyone, but I think there's a lot of industries that just got comfortable. GFC 12, 14 years ago, everyone was a little bit okay, and it hurt everyone a little bit. But I think for the last decade, everyone's been pretty comfortable. Yeah. Businesses have grown, economies have grown, primarily as a human race. I think we've been going pretty well. Capitalism for most part has I know we've got a massive amount of problems. I know we have a lot of challenges. We've got humanitarian issues all around the globe. Sure. But when you think about it, in the last decade, we haven't had big wars. We haven't had huge genocides as bad as past. We haven't had
just for the record, there are actually still genocides happening. A lot of them we don't see on our social media, because we get to think about the royals instead of these genocides. So just for the record.
Does anyone really care about the royals when compared to, all the schoolgirls in Nigeria last week that were kidnapped, right? That frustrates me. So, I understand that. But I think compare that to 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, we're not here talking about a Jewish Holocaust with millions type of thing, and I think we are on the improve. We're doing a lot of good things, but we always can continue to improve. So I think that a lot of people, particularly in Australia, people have been protected a lot. A lot of people in a lot of industries in Australia are very protected compared to a lot of other countries around the world.
But aren't we still being really protected here?
Absolutely, we are. Yeah, we closed down our borders. Everyone's closed.
Exactly.
Borders. We just sort of went right over. I mean, even we've had our own internal struggles with states and territories. Not wanting to take planes. And Sydney's had to take 80-something% of all people. And then you've got, Queensland at the moment. The Queensland government saying we're not paying the $30 million that we owe for the quarantine situation. So we're not going to accept our people back into Queensland. You've got to go via Sydney. They're going to do it all, and then we're not going to pay the bill that we agreed to pay. So there's a lot of people that are very self-absorbed, and it's about helping ourselves at the moment in a lot of respects, unfortunately. Yeah. And there's still a lot of challenges globally that we need to be able to work on as a human race, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing: we've already got opportunities to do that. I had an amazing conversation here on the decision table with Greg, who is like the Elon Musk, but in the whole electric car. And
cool.
Like this amazing guy, smart ass, got a great bunch of smart people that are a part of his world and company. And they are putting together such a great concept of electric cars, almost like, so I love the way he described it. He goes, it's like a plastic mobile phone with wheels. And so like we never ever want to buy, like we won't have to buy another car. We just upgrade our skins and upgrade all that. Like it's just such a cool concept.
Like the old Nokia 5210.
Exactly. That's how I thought too, right?
Yeah,
so it was just so cool. But here was the thing that we got into the discussion around, and that was this, that although it would be opening up major opportunities for Australians here to manufacture it here, to build it out from here, Australia is so slow on bringing it in as an acceptable thing to manufacture here. All the investors, by the way, are outside of this world, not in Australia. The more that we continue to make it difficult for us to grow the economy here and the thinking here and the borders closed, it makes it really difficult for us to not widen that gap between where the global space is economically and then where we are as Australians. Yes, I know we have fine resources. We have some amazing things here, but we also are held back because of maybe some of the thinking that we've already spoken about already. Any thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. And I've been saying for many, many years, and I had a really great conversation, I reckon about a decade ago with Brad Sugars about this. We were having dinner at his house in Vegas. And Brad's been really insightful to a lot of changes in my life, a good 10, 15 years ago. And I'm really grateful for that. And I remember we've had some good times together in different places. But I remember sitting down and having a good
party time.
We've had a few good party nights. We don't need to go into those.
No, of course not.
We don't need to name names or anything. But anyway, no. And I'm really grateful for that friendship with Brad. And I remember having these conversations. And it's funny how these type of conversations over the years, like you remember those little bits and pieces. And I really got chatting to him about it. And I remember we were really just saying Australia's a funny country in the business entrepreneurial space, in that as a country, we're known for a lot of things. And one of them is we're known for beaches, life-saving,
kangaroos, koalas.
Yeah, all those things. But you think people know Australia as having beaches, and we're all fun-loving, having barbecues on the beach. We're meant to all be surfers. We do surf life-saving, all this type of stuff. We've got a great surf type of culture. So none of us are afraid of the water as such, right? Like we all just run and jump in. We jump into the water. We're all surfers. We all surf life-saving. We all do all this stuff, right? But then it comes to business, and we're like, rah, rah, rah. And we get to the water and go, ooh, and we're scared of the water. And that's the way I've always looked at it. And I remember that conversation with Brad clearly, and that really fundamentally changed my way of thinking. Like, we're fine to get to the water and go, whatever, we're going to swim here, do this, do that.
Yeah.
But when we get to business, we get to the limits of our own country's border with the water, and we go, ooh. And you sit there and you go, and especially now with technology and with everything online COVID-wise, you sit there and go, like, really, why do you have to be only doing business with someone you can sit down and break bread with? Lovely. And I love doing that. But why can't you get onto a Zoom call? And I mean, you're doing it. I'm doing it. I've got business over in America and stuff. And it's like,
me too.
We know that 6 months ago, we basically had a board decision going, we ain't going to see each other face to face for at least 12 months, probably 18 months. And we know it's at least 12 months away now without trying. And so you sit there and you go, There's a whole lot of things that need to happen. We can't just sit around and go, hands under our pants and just sit on our hands and do nothing. We've got no choice but to.
Well, you can, but I think that's where you're going to lose out, right? Like we know that
you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Yeah.
Like a tree. So I think we have to look for the opportunities, and we have to be, and that's where it's not about pivoting. I think that's just about agility.
Yeah. But here's the other thing. I love that, by the way. I really love that. And I think that we know we have to be agile as individuals. As a global space, what is interesting about it, I've just spent an hour and 45 minutes talking to an American bank and, going back and forth. And I still was unable to get what I needed done because I'm based here in Australia. But here's the thing. I do work across the world.
Yeah.
And the systems that we have aren't actually and of course we're wanting to keep everything secure, and we all want our money safe, we all want things, but it's actually getting really, really difficult to build out throughout. And as the borders have closed, there seems to be even more tight security on everything and people, because everyone goes, they've got access now. Hey, we had access before, by the way, to the globe. And so things are getting harder to be integrating across the globe, yet that is our world. And we can't get on, like they go, but now you need to come and be here face to face for us to deal with this issue that you have. And I'm like going, sure, open up the borders so I can get on a plane to come here, but I can't.
Absolutely.
So,
and the thing is, we love being face to face. Like nothing beats that. Like I still remember we were in Japan together, and there was you.
I remember the photo you got. So I totally remember that.
Which one? There's a few.
Both of them. The one with the big thing, and then the one on the back of the
Kentucky uses that in some of his marketing when he's on that denim scooter and stuff like that. Yeah. You remember that? Like we were just wandering around in Harajuku, and we were catching up with the locals, and then we were playing the foosball table and just chilling out, and you have great times. Like you can just sit down, chat, and it is amazing to do that and break bread with people, share a glass of water or wine or whatever, and just talk and chat. But right now, you can't do that most of the time. I mean, we've had states of the lockdown. You can't even talk to your own family face-to-face at times. So what do? Do we just sit around and go, ooh, woe is me? Or do we turn around and go, make use of what's there? And I think anyone who's not capitalizing on the situation and the process moving forward, I think is fundamentally leaving themselves open to be left in the wash. Like we have no choice but to get on the front foot. The tide's always going to come in, the tide's always going to go out, but I think we have to be looking for opportunities. We have to be, and this isn't just about opportunities to grow your business. This is opportunities of how do we move forward as people. I always say I like to grow people personally and professionally. I won't ever bring on a team member in any of my companies just to have them there professionally. I want to make sure that we grow as people, not just professionals. And I think that becomes really powerful. And I think, in these situations, and I think the mentality that premiers or presidents and prime ministers and that have of locking down, whilst I understand the scenario of protecting our people, closing our borders, containment, etc., when we think about that from the opposite side, that actually shows the wrong thing, in my opinion, for how we need to approach so many factors of life. So while we compress and contain and, compress the virus and all that sort of stuff, what we're actually doing is, like psychologically and subconsciously, we're telling our brain to stop and to think small and to don't look out. It's like look in, just protect ourselves and our community. But then we're actually got to be doing the opposite and going, no, now's the time to look out and go, how can I help? Where can I help? What can we do to help them? How can they like in the world right now? Like think about climate change. You go back 2 years and it was just the biggest thing. Greta Thunberg was everywhere and blah, blah, blah. And it was all, and then there was all debates about whether it was an alarmist situation or whether it's climate or weather and all this stuff, right? Let's not get into that. But all of a sudden, have you even heard the word climate change, 2 words, in the last 12 months? Not really. Because
I have, because I get to hear everything like that in my world.
No,
but I know what you're
saying,
saying, right? Yeah, I know what
it's
you're
like
saying.
All of a sudden, most of the discussions, like, let's just park it and we'll deal with it later. Let's deal with COVID and the pandemic. Let's just compress and deal with everything ourselves. And then when that's done, we'll do the next thing. And I think sometimes that do one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing creates a little bit of like, it's a bit clunky.
You know, like business, you're always working
Here's
on two or
thing.
three.
Here's the thing. I think it's more than clunky, and I think doing it one by one. And here's what I'm really thinking with the whole humanity as stakeholders at the decision table. Like when we go back to humanity as stakeholders, we see the human as the whole person. And I think this backs up what you were saying in that we do it individually, right? And it's the individually that is really difficult, because when we come to the table, we are not individuals that we just turn up one day and you messaged me before, like you said, hey, I've got family, I've got multiple businesses, I've got, like, there is stress around. Well, you bring that
this morning, and I went, I just need coffee, give me 5. Yeah,
you bring that to the table, but yet we do this, we create these things where you are Jason, that is the businessman right now. No, you're not. You're Jason, that is the whole human, that we actually have to bring that to the table. And I think a lot of what we've created across the globe before has been these, we talk about segregation. There's segregation even just within a human being as an individual, right? Like there really is. Yeah. Like we have to segregate. I'm a mom now. I'm a parent now. I'm a wife now.
I'll switch on
I'm
to business.
I'll switch off. Now.
On to switch off, and
Yeah, but I'm not. I turn up being all those things every time I turn up wherever I am. How do we take that and we narrow that gap?
Let me ask you a question. That's okay. What's your perception about that then? Like we hear people say, like you know, when I work, then I switch off work and I down tools and I go and play dad and I do this, then I'm not switching back on till the next morning. So for me, I've always gone, I sort of see that as a fluid situation. Not that I don't ever switch off work, but I think I'm in many respects saying and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm hearing what you're saying there as well, in the fact that I think
there's no right or wrong, but I think it's a question we have to ask, right? And I think, and what I'm saying in that side of it is that there has to be effortless flow in all that we create. That's why I talk about not business models, but business ecosystems. We have to have ecosystems. And part of that ecosystem is how you function. So if you're not dealing with the physical side of you, then you know that your productivity is not going to be at its peakest moment. Same with your spiritual, whatever that is to believe. It's your why. It's why you are here, what that is about. If you don't know what that is, you probably are going to be wandering quite massively in your business world, because you don't really know how to turn up. You don't know what that means to you. You're not driven by whatever that is within to do and get those numbers that you know you need to reach. In the same way that us as how I am at home has to reflect, if I'm having trouble with my husband or with my kids and dealing through difficult times, I am never going to turn up at my 100% in my professional, because in the back of my mind, those things are going to have massive play in how I feel today, how I'm going to feel my energy level is to what I'm going to do. Does that mean that we segregate those? No, we just go. And I think that the best example of this and what has come out of what has happened with the pandemic is we see mental health on a massive increase right now. Absolutely. And the reason that is on a massive increase is because there's all these challenges that maybe people are thinking, feeling, working through, and then having to also rock up to work, and maybe there's challenges and pressures and things to do there. I think that what has happened is, for the first time in a long time, we're bringing it to the attention that maybe we're not just this person that turns up, got to hit those numbers, got to, and I think that's where that flow is coming into play.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's missing in many avenues. Let's be honest. I think. And it's kind of it's interesting. I think I've always had a really good connection with you, Kerry Marine. It's something I'm really grateful for. Sorry to have to tell you that. But no, it's just one of those things. I think that you and I think very similar to that. It's one of those scenarios that I very much agree. I don't feel that we walk into your workplace and you have to put on your professional hat and that type of stuff. I think that how you walk into work and how you leave work and how you are with your family and that type of stuff is one and the same. Now, you have to obviously make sure the phone or the iPad isn't sitting next to you while you're having dinner with your family and you're present and not, you're present and not just present, right? So I think those type of things are important, but I completely agree. I think a lot of people miss that point. And for me, I don't know, maybe it's me, but the back of my mindset also sits there at times. And I think, well, if that's how they are, like work, that's their professional front. But if they don't have a social media profile, if they don't have any avenue of letting us know who they are as people, then it always doesn't it sort of create a little, it's not, I don't see that as inviting or warmth or anything like that to not know who people are as people. I start to go, what's going on? Why do they not want to know? And some people go, I like to keep my personal and professional life separate. And I'm like, well,
I know, I've heard it many times.
It doesn't really work like that. I mean, even when you're an actor or actress, you're still in a situation where your personal life is always in the public eye. And I sort of sit there and go, there's so many avenues there where I think that we need to be a lot more open with being who we are and showing people who we are, because you're always going to have a connection with people that like you for who you are, not just, professionally.
I think it brings up a couple of questions. I think it's that I love that connection piece. I think it's the connection piece with building trust so that you can connect and then whatever build relationships out. We know that relationships are so important with building healthy ecosystems within a business. We know that. But I think it comes to that other side of it, right? Is that society has taught us to be one way, to think one way. And as long as you do that, you just think of it in the coaching consulting world, right? As a prime example. When you look at coaches, when you look at consultants in that world, do they look really similar? Do they do the same sort of similar things? Like if I happened to be at one of our things yesterday and,
Don't name names.
I'm not going to name names, but it makes me smile inside every time because I just go, seriously, we're at this stage again. But it's my famous answer. When someone says, oh, this is what I'm about and this is what I do. And I go, okay, so how's that different to everyone else that I've heard and everyone else that's saying the same thing? I'm not saying what you're about is a bad thing. We all know that's beneficial. But it sounds like everyone else. And I think we're in an environment that teaches us to follow that herd mentality.
Yep.
And,
well, how many times we heard herd immunity as well, right? We're just
exactly why I brought it up.
Yeah. There you go.
Just stir in there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, if we talk about the herd side of things as well.
Yeah.
And I'd love your thoughts on it. I don't want to get stuck into the vaccine, anti-vax, that type of stuff, right?
I don't want to go there with you being in the medical industry. I wouldn't.
Yeah, so I'm not an anti-vaxxer. All right, I'm quite happy to say that vaccinations have basically rid the world of some really, really nasty things over the years, and that's been one of the greatest feats of humanity, I think, is to, like, oh yes, we go to the moon and all those things, but to be able to turn around and say millions of people have lives have been saved because they haven't died of whooping cough as a baby or
that's pretty
whatever, right? It's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So I find it interesting though that a lot of the anti-vaccination sentiment at the moment is based around the comments of, well, it's not really tried and tested. We haven't had it for what happens in 5 years. We don't know what it does to your kidneys in 10 years' time. And I sit there and I'm like, I find that an interesting mentality that people feel that they're doing what's best. Well, I think that people feel that they're skeptical and scared, and there's fear there that they don't know what's going to happen in 10 years' time with what potentially could happen with this vaccine, and let's not get into the whole, it alters my DNA and I'm in Bill Gates' 5G chemical trail walk and all this. Let's not worry about that. Right. But if we get into the situation where someone goes, I don't feel I want to step forward with a vaccination because you can't prove to me what happens in 10 years' time because we didn't have it for 10 years. Well, I understand that. But surely when we've only had COVID for a year and a half, basically a year-ish type of thing, right?
Yeah.
We've been pretty good with being able to deal with something as a global pandemic as we have as such. Let's not say whether it's good or bad. But if something was to come up in 5 years or 10 years' time that was a challenge, one, we don't know whether it would be linked to the vaccine anyway. But two, would it not be the human race that just actually identifies what's happening and creates a situation of working with it? I mean, you go back 50, 60, 70 years, we didn't even know what cancer was. Now we actually have treatments and early diagnosis, etc. Yeah. So if there's a fear right now with someone saying, oh, I don't want to get vaccinated because I don't know whether it's going to hurt me in 10 years' time. Well, one, you don't know what's around or what we're doing in life that may do that anyway. Mm-hmm. But don't we put enough confidence in humanity and our own science and medicine and ability right now? What we've done in 12 months is amazing. So if something was to happen, and we don't know.
Okay, so I want to challenge this piece because you know I'm going to. Yeah, and my challenge on this piece is this. Is this, that I have absolute full faith in humanity. I really do. We have so many smart people. What I don't have faith in is the systems, and then the power of, or the use of power. And I also find we weren't even thinking about COVID until COVID hit. Then all of a sudden we've sped it up to come up with a solution on that. So there is some variables on that I want to, and I would want to question. I also question the fact that we.
But doesn't that also give you confidence, though, that if something happened in 5 years' time, we as a human race would be able to come up with a solution or something of benefit as we need to?
But I would want to know that it's a clean slate of criteria that is coming up with that solution, and the right people were all there and to make that. And often in cases, and this is something that I find absolutely interesting, because my whole thing is, how do we narrow the gap with top decision tables of what's being created and innovated at that level and solutions being bought, and what is actually needed on the front line of humanity, and how do we narrow that gap? So this question is a constant question of who is at that table, who do we need at that table, and what is the actual variables in which we are coming up with this solution, and what are the results?
I hear that and I say,
would want.
Well, I completely agree, but I picked up on some words there, and you said, like it's a constant variable, it's ever changing, and I think it is. Like one of my companies, Global Kaizen Group, my number plates are Kaizen, like continuous improvement is one of the things. And my thing, like when I start to really think deep about this, I start to go, well, shouldn't we do what's best for us right now, right? As long as it's not do it now because we're all dying tomorrow. That's not it, right? But if we know that what we're going to do now is best for the human race and humanity right now, and it's going to help with we aren't guaranteed that we're all going to die from vaccines in 10 years' time or something like that, right? I'm sitting there going, aren't we in the best situation right now?
So here's the thing, I agree with that piece absolutely. Yep. What I want to know, and what we would need to then come to agreeing on, is this the best thing right now? So that's the next piece, right?
Well, I don't think we can ever be 100% sure of anything, though, can we?
No, for sure. But there's some data that I have that I question, is this the right thing?
And we should.
And so here's one of the criteria, or the data that I have at this moment that I would bring to the table about it. And this is it. This is, okay, so we don't have COVID in Australia. The borders are not opening right now. Why would we be putting something into our systems that we still don't really know, but we hope that this will be, and we've got as much as we can? And in lots of ways, when you ask the government and the health people, and you say, hey, I've had COVID, am I going to be more like, should I be taking this? Should I not? Oh, you know what? That's why we're going to be following that data to see how this goes. I don't want to be a guinea pig, Jason. I really don't. And I go, why would I be putting something in my system while I'm rebuilding all my immune system after having had that first bout of COVID? I was one of those ones. Mm-hmm. And I'm rebuilding, doing really well, amazingly well. Why would I be putting a vaccine in me now when the borders aren't open and the COVID is not here?
Yeah, I completely. So there's a couple of things in that though. There's different strains first and foremost, right?
I get that.
So there's different strains. We also don't know. We really don't have a definitive answer of whether you can get COVID twice.
Yeah.
Right. I've got colleagues in America in major hospitals in New York, and they're under gag notices, and I can pretty much. I know that I've got to be very careful with my words here.
I know you do.
There's some very very powerful, influential people that might know that they've already had it twice, right? So let's just put that, right?
There's always that option that maybe that has happened.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're still in a situation where we're trying to work out as a global medical and science community how transmissible this is and how much of this, how many people are asymptomatic. I mean, at Adelaide only 2 days ago, the health department over there are really worried because they've got really, really strong levels in the waste treatment and the fecal matter in 2 different areas of the CBD. And yet Adelaide haven't had a case for like 4 months or something ridiculous. Yeah. And they're sitting there going, well, hang on a sec, that just adds more fuel to the argument that 30% or 40% or whatever the number is they're saying at the moment, people can have it and be asymptomatic. The same as any virus. Right. And so when I chat with my guys that are, epidemiologists and virologists and all this sort of stuff, they start to go, well, we just don't know. But here's the confidence factor that everyone should have is the fact that we never actually know more than this for any virus, bacterial disease ever. We never have and we never will. We're never going to be 100% certain. We've got to go with best medical practice and best science and where we're placed right now. And this is why all the doctors support it, because all the doctors sit and go, this is how we approach every virus. This is how I've been trained for 30 or 40 years. This is what we do every time we have a new flu and these type of things.
So although this is a new one, the way we do it isn't new.
The way we do it isn't new. All we've done, say, for the vaccine is sped that up a bit, right? And and then it's kind of funny because we're not dealing with, it's not hepatitis A or AIDS or something huge like that. Like it's here and now. And it's like the flu. Every year there's a different flu vaccine. So we do work quickly every year with a different strain and that type of stuff. So it's not that big a deal, really, to come up with a COVID vaccine. And we were able to do it because we're smart as a human race. Is it perfect? No. Is it ever going to be perfect? No. But what we've done for COVID on a global level is what we do for every other virus. And so when you've got the scientists and medical officers going, I think we'd be stupid to say it's perfect and it's completely safe and all that, because it's not. And we know that it's only 90% effective, and we know that it's going to stop transmission by 74% and these type of things. But that's actually great compared to most of the vaccines we have. Like I've got my sister-in-law, she had a child only 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago. And it's like, you go and get a whooping cough vaccine booster. I'm not going to get whooping cough. It's not even around in the area. But for the betterment of that child to not get it, we're going to go and do it. And we've been doing that for, decades, right? Because that's what we do. So I think sometimes people get a little bit misaligned as to, I'm not going to put the poison in and I'm going to do this and I'm going to build up antibodies and those things. Yeah, but when you think about it, when we get a virus, we go and take action. We do things. And if we know that we can do that. So I guess for me in that respect, I know I'm not being silly about it. I know it's not perfect. I know that there might be a chance in 10 years' time that it has changed something around how my body reacts. But again, you know what? I don't know what having coffee daily is actually doing to my body in 10 years' time, even though we've got studies and research and papers. Everything, breathing air, like
I think it's doing amazing things, and I'm going to live with that. And
absolutely, like breathing air. Like, do I take deeper breaths, shorter breaths? What type of climate change is going to change around what happens to my lungs or passive smoking? Like, there's so many variables for me and for everyone, but for me, I look at it and go, there's thousands of variables every day that we don't actually know what's going to happen in 10 years' time. So if we're to put the right people in the right place, we're to continuously improve and try and be better as people and humans every year, every day type of thing, then we're going to be best placed. So that if we do have a COVID-30 that hits, we're going to have the best people in the best place to do what's needed. And I think that for me, that's why I don't agree with a lot of the approaches of closing downs and that type of stuff and the big lockdowns with Melbourne's and all that sort of stuff. But what I do really understand, and I think a lot of sort of that anti-vax sentiment misses, is the fact that what we're doing for COVID-19 vaccines and how we're treating this with the percentage of transmission it stops and the like the way in which it's only 94% active, you go, that's actually better than what we do for every other bit of science. So when I had someone go, oh, I'm not anti-vax, I just don't want something in me that's not proven. It's like, well, you've already done 20 vaccinations in the last 30 years of your life that were less effective and less proven than this. And when you stop and think about that, I can't stop and go and challenge people's mentality on that, going, if this is the best we've ever had with these type of scenarios and you're fine with all the other stuff, why wouldn't you be fine with this?
Yeah. I think that's one of the keys though, right? Is we've got to stop and think, and we've got to question. If there's anything that I want coming out of these conversations, is that it's okay to have these conversations, and it's not like we've got it all sorted. But we've got to keep evolving, and the only way we're going to evolve is if it becomes acceptable for us to question things, to do exactly this, to stop and think, well, I like what you were saying around that. And in my case, I think that it always creates an awareness that I think is so important. Like, we don't know what we don't know, but when you do, there's a responsibility for what you're going to do with that information, that data.
Absolutely.
And I think that's
all industries as well.
Yeah, totally.
If you look across every industry globally,
which is what we're doing, by the way, on the decision table. Like, this is not industry specific.
No, not at all. I think the two most scrutinized industries globally are science and medicine.
Yeah, interesting.
You know, like, you can get away with so many other things, you know, like whether it's a HR or whether it's building industries. Like, you think about all the different codes of like how you mix the concretes and all the bits of it. Yeah. Yet for 50, 60, 80 years, science and medicine has been the most heavily scrutinized industry ever. Like, to get I've got so many good friends that are published authors. They've had peer-reviewed studies and it takes years and years of dedicated time and effort and studies to do that type of stuff, and to have that literature reviewed. And like, even like right now, like one of the vaccines out of the UK that we have got now in Australia, it had 43,000 guinea pigs, right, humans in that trial. And there was only one adverse reaction to that. And you sit there, to use your guinea pig comment before, right? And so we sit there and we go, right, well, if we're in a situation where we've had 43,000 people trial this, and this is what's going on, and then you've got, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of scientists and medical experts globally. I think just turning around going, oh, this is worth so much money to those companies. Well, it is, but capitalism, name something that's made at a big, high level somewhere in the world that doesn't involve money. Doesn't exist, right? Like, we all know, like,
I think sometimes we question the wrong things. Don't you think that? Like,
I completely agree, 100%.
And then our focus becomes around something that is actually going to take us away from it rather than bring the solution. Agree.
Yeah, we question. I think it's almost a bit of a self-entitlement thing. It's like, I want to make a decision. I can't have, you're not going to tell me, you're not. It's like, as kids, you say, you've got kids, you say, go and clean up your room, Ethan. He might go, type of thing, right? No one likes being told what to do. And I think we're in an era of the human race right now where, you know, you go back 30 years and you're at school and, you know, you'd get the cane or the strap or whatever, or your parents would whack you with
I got the strap when I went to school because I wrote with, here's the thing, I wrote with my left hand and they said to write with your right hand. I was still in that stage where they literally strapped you, and I talked out of line one day. I was the only girl in the class, by the way, that ever got strapped, and you got strapped in front of the classroom.
Yeah. And you know, like, I can remember my mum hit me with a wooden spoon and breaking the wooden spoon.
Oh yeah, like, I've had rulers broken on me.
Yeah, and then I was like whinging at her and got a flogging from my dad later because my sister didn't get a flogging because the wooden spoon was broken then, type of thing. And you just sit there and you go, could you imagine right now if you hit your kid with a wooden spoon? Like, dear God, it'd be on their Snapchats and their TikToks and their, like, you'd be strung up. And so I think that
So, by the way, there's some good things about that, because you would be, and I like, so if it was over the top and whatever,
Absolutely.
like whatever anyone's thinking, so there is some good things on this, right?
Absolutely.
But what we're saying here, or what you're saying, what are you saying here on this piece?
Well, I think that our perceptions and our interpretation as humans has changed and evolved, maybe faster than we want, and maybe. I don't know the right word. I don't want to say good or bad, but I'm going to probably say that, but maybe not for the betterment all the time.
So I always go, this is where humanity is stakeholders at the table. I go, well, is it adding value to humanity? Is it taking away from? So in a lot of cases, right?
In many respects, is not adding value. That's the thing.
And that's what you're saying here. Yeah, exactly.
You know, like you mentioned at the very start of this, a post I put up today about Pepe Le Pew has been banned out of the new Space Jam 2 because it's, someone's complained that it's promoting rape culture.
Yeah.
And I read that and I went, what? Hang on. Some skunk that's clearly animated, that's completely fake, that doesn't exist. It's a talking animal. Because he's like, come to me, give me a kiss, type of thing. Like that was just cartoons as kids. Now it's seen as promoting rape culture. But then I saw someone on that post turn around and went, yeah, my kid has just been awarded and won something or other online for stealing a car and lighting a prostitute on fire.
Yeah, that was
on Grand Theft Auto.
And
you sit there and you go, and you've got all the computer games, and people go, oh, but they're just games, they don't hurt. And you go, but if it's okay for games that apparently are really realistic, etc., if it's okay to shoot, rape, pillage, and all this type of stuff and be rewarded and encouraged, but you can't watch a clearly fake bullshit cartoon character, that's a long bow. And I think sometimes the interpretation that some people have, I don't think is for the betterment of human society. Correct. Because right now,
I agree with you on this. I totally agree with you on this, and
like
I think that
potato head. Oops, hang on. It's got to be gender non-specific. No, like because at the end of the day, we're not saying anything about people that are gay, bi, tri, or men or women. We're just saying that's.
But people are. But here's the thing: people are saying that that's what it's coming back to, and that actually this was designed around this and that. And I go, but isn't this taking? If we go back to perspective and communication, isn't this just taking us away from? Well, it's not even too far. It's just taking us away from what we actually need to get. If we look at problems across the globe, there are major issues. We've talked about, the economy. We've talked about environment. We've talked about social things. These are the bigger issues. These are the bigger things that often I think our focus is being taken away from. These things that really are not going to bring challenge. It could ruin someone's life. It could change and I think that's more detrimental, that we're actually not going back, but what does humanity need and how do we shift it from problem to solution? And I think that some of these things, we're questioning the wrong things. We're creating a revolt around the wrong things that actually are not going to bring the change and shift the change. And I think that's something.
Let me throw something a little bit controversial out here. It's not too good, but let me throw it. And I'm me, I'm always one to throw something.
Like I said, when on the pre-thing on this, I said, like, I'm sure you're not going to hold back. So this is a no judgment zone, by the way. This is
no, that's fine. I mean, it was about 60 seconds before we went live, so it didn't really give me too much warning on it, but that's okay. No, when I really start to look at this, I go, exactly what you said. I feel that the human race gets misguided on the wrong things. We should be talking about equality. We should be talking about climate. We should be talking about health. We look at some of the catastrophically bad shit that happens to people's lives around the world. Right? I mentioned it before, 200 schoolgirls get kidnapped at gunpoint in Kenya, in Nigeria, and no one bats an eyelid, yet the next day, like in Australia, 1.4 million people live watched, the Oprah interview with the Royals. And I sit there and go, I couldn't care who said what about what. It's got nothing to do. Can't we go and find out where 204 schoolgirls are? Because that's bad.
Right? Do you know Zimbabwe at the moment has no access to economy at all. It is like they have very limited food resources, medical resources. Do you know they have 100 beds to the whole of Zimbabwe, and they're not even able to have healthcare there because the healthcare is not being paid. Yep. And so they've got no one looking after that. That's 100 beds, not for COVID, for the whole of everything that may come into that country.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's horrendous.
And so people are dying. People are not.
Yeah. So if you look at Nigeria, some of these guys have been doing this in the last 6 weeks. This has been happening like a dozen times. It's happened, right? And multiple times they've actually taken hostages and they demand to the farmers that they want to get paid a small ransom. It might be like a tiny amount, really, considering it's someone's life. But before I leave, you need to cook me food. So they actually turn around. And when you sit there, I go, fundamentally, doesn't people start to realize that this isn't just people doing bad shit because they want money. It's because they actually need food to live. Like this is out of absolute desperation, right?
Yeah. So trafficking's on the increase because of all of this as well.
Absolutely. And so I sit there and I'm like, I know it's all about draining the swamp. We can talk all philanthropic about this type of stuff. But I sit there and I go, I think as a human race, we get really misguided on what we should be talking about. And this is a controversial bit that it will be perceived by some as being a little bit controversial. I think that in many respects, it's people like to talk about this type of stuff because they've got an opinion and they might not be the best placed person to sit at the big table on health or medical. Like, you know, you think about the vast majority of Australians, and I'm not saying people are dumb or stupid. I'm not saying that. But when they're not educated or experienced or have the knowledge base in a certain area, let's say with virology, they're not able to really step forward and provide the substance that that other people might regarding, say, COVID vaccines, blah, 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 medical science. Yeah. So they are left to talk at the level that they can talk at. Yeah. And this is where some people go, you're saying I'm dumb. No, I'm not. What I'm saying is different people operate.
By the way, I think that's very non-controversial here now because...
I mean, if you talk about high-end landscaping and water retention and all this, I'd be like, just put an ag line in. I'd be like, well, because I'd only be able to talk at the level I can talk at. And we all at different levels in different things. But I think that because it's a big issue, which, let's be honest, is global health pandemic, people have an opinion and people only can talk to the level. And you said it before, we don't know what we don't know. So as a net result, people always feel empowered to be able to talk on things that they feel they know more about. So as a net result, they talk on social medias, mainstream media talk about the royals, they talk about all this type of stuff. And it gives people their 5 minutes of fame because everyone can have, when we have low-level discussions about Pepe Le Pew cartoon character type thing, everyone can talk about that because it's them from their childhood. Everyone went through it. But if we talk about, you know, billions of dollars spent on the healthcare side and vaccines and the high-level science and microbiology and all this, people go, I don't know, so I'm not going to talk about it and look stupid. I'm just going to, why don't we talk about Pepe Le Pew? And so I feel that as humanity, like the human race, like we talk at what we feel comfortable with because we don't want to feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And as a net result, there's like too much discussion around the bullshit low-level crap we shouldn't be talking about. And we don't focus on the big needs, you know, whether it be health, medical, you know, like whatever, terrorism or equality.
Yeah, exactly. All those things that are affecting humanity. And here's the thing. If we don't start having these conversations, bringing them out and starting to see how we can shift it as a global landscape, then what are we leaving for our next generations and the generations to come?
Completely. I mean, for me personally, like, you know, like even over here on my shoulder here, I've got 2025. In 2015, I decided to set myself a target. I wanted to empower and inspire the lives of 20 million people by the year 25. Right?
Yeah, I love that.
Continuous improvement. That's it. That's been my vision. That's my whole thing. And everyone knows who knows me knows that. You know, people don't even know some people don't know what the word Kaiser means. And they see my number plate and they go, Kaizen. And I go, what's that about? And I go, it's a continuous improvement, day by day, personal and professional growth, right? And they go, that's pretty cool. And I go, now you got to hold me accountable to it, right? So that's who I am. And that's what I do. And so much about this for me is about legacy. This isn't about, we all have our toys and we have fun with our family and we do things because we can, right? And we've created those opportunities for ourselves. you don't need to, and I don't need to sort of think about just our kids. We're thinking about now our grandkids, right? And when you start to talk about financial implications, that type of stuff, I'm thinking about my grandkids at best.
Me too.
And I go, well, then I start to think, well, how much, money and wealth and that type of stuff is actually going to be beneficial then if the world looks like this, and this. I go, crap, right? Like, okay, you've got a better bunker when the nuclear revolution comes. It's like, you're gonna live really well underground like a mole, and you go, do we want to do that? And so that's where I start to think about legacy, and I start to think about what we should be doing now, and talking about Pepe Le Pew and talking about all that type of low-level crap. I think doesn't serve humanity.
It's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so if people want to connect with you and want to know more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
That's kind of crazy. This isn't about me.
I know it's not, but I still want to give
Facebook, Instagram. My name's on the screen there. Just search me up. You'll see this ugly head. And, connect up and that type of stuff. I'm more than happy to chat and help out and that type of stuff. Like I said, I'm like Gary Murray. I do a lot of work with a lot of people for I don't charge money for stuff and things. We just do it because we love it, and I've got some really great people that.
But I think that's where we that's why humanity as stakeholders is really important. Here's the other thing, and what I always ask at every one of these conversations, the only question that I ask the same on every decision table is this one. No, it's good. I think there's some fundamentals to say leadership. Oh, he's putting the glasses on now. I think there's some fundamentals, right? Like, and we've talked about so many amazing things here today. I love the layers we've done. But what this does
again.
I know exactly.
I postponed the last couple, so I'm sorry, but
I know seriously. What was with that? But here's the other thing that I really love about this is that, this helps to create an awareness. And that's what I think, I talk about the need for a new approach to leadership. I think there's some fundamentals to leadership. I think if we can have a new approach to leadership, this is created not because we're putting rules and regulations and things in place, but we're using different lenses. And so this helps us when we create an awareness to have different lenses, to start getting a different perspective, as we've talked about, and become more agile, as you've, brought up beautifully. Here's the thing. Like I said, I think what you don't know, but when you do, there's a responsibility. And so the next fundamental for me in leadership is that leadership creates ownership. Like, what are we going to do to own this? So we've had an amazing conversation here today. I love it because I love you. I love everything. I love the passion that we bring, because we are like these strong people that think for ourselves, and we want to see growth, and we are determined to see growth, and we are not just going to be happy to settle with status quo. And I think that is the powerful thing for both of us in all we do. Here's what I want to ask you, and this is the question from this conversation we've had today. What are you going to take from it? What are you going to take from it? What have you learned? What are some insights? Maybe it's confirmed something. What is it?
I think for me, I think this probably solidified a discussion I was having in my own head yesterday with a good friend of mine. And I was actually on the golf course yesterday. It's my birthday 2 days ago. Had some
happy
friends
birthday.
Thank God. And then we caught up and had another game of golf yesterday as well, just because. And we were chatting about this, and we're talking about being polarizing and a few things like that. And and it came up yesterday, but I think our discussion today has really solidified this as well. The fact that I understand that I can be quite controversial, and I can be, push pretty hard on some of my opinions at different times. And I think understanding as well that I need to improve myself to make sure that I'm not pushing a little bit hard personally with people, or making topics become a little bit too personal, and I think that's solidified a lot today as well. I feel that I need to be able to take away from this as well the fact that we've had some great decisions and great discussions, and all of us, myself included, right? First and foremost, I'll put my hand up first for this, need to probably be a little bit more accepting of other people's ideas and thoughts. And we all have opinions, we all have ideas. It doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong just because someone doesn't agree.
But I think what it does do is it tells us we need to all think and talk with higher purpose and higher levels.
Yeah.
We can't just talk on the lower level just because it's easy and convenient. We need to, it's our responsibility as humans to step up and challenge ourselves to be a bit more comfortable with the uncomfortable topics, you know, and if it means that we have to talk higher than what we might know, by asking questions and getting involved with that, it actually will enlighten us and educate us and give us more thought process. And if all of us could be doing more of that, myself, like I said, myself included, we understand things with a high level of purpose. And I think all of us lift up. We have better understandings of all different levels of humanitarian issues around about leadership and all that type of stuff. And I think when all of us agree to lift together, we're going to get away from the let's cancel Pepe Le Pew bullshit. And we're going to start talking at higher level about the topics and the issues that actually matter the most to the human race. And I think that's, and I think today has been another support of that. That's where I need to be as a person. I think if all of us were to do that, that's actually pretty special.
Yeah. So I always, I always say that, when you're doing it and I'm doing it, we're starting to shift it. What if everyone could do it? Imagine how we would shift from problem to solution if everyone was doing it, right?
Like vaccines take 10 years to develop, and yet they did it in like 8 months. And you go, wow. And it's like, that's just because we focused on it.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we focus on some of these things and actually have less low-level crap, more high-level discussions, and force people that might not understand all to lift up? Yeah, absolutely understand that we can talk and we can discuss and we can question things. Let's not get personal. Let's not just take someone's opinion.
I love that. Let's not just get personal. I think that is such a good thing. So what I'm taking from our
we all do it. I mean, like I said, that's probably the biggest thing for me. Someone will say something, I go, no.
We're allowed to get personal too, because sometimes that's where the driver comes from, actually hearing the personal side of it. We need to get personal. But when we're making the decisions, we need to go back to what is going to add value to humanity, what is going to take away from it. And I think that's where we learn from each other, we evolve, and we realize that some of this is uncomfortable, and sometimes we've just got to have these uncomfortable conversations to be able to shift that dial.
I'm sitting here now talking to a global audience saying, I need to be better myself. I need to not fuel that personal stuff. I need to make sure that when I'm having these discussions, I don't take offense to some of the things because they weren't intending to, just like I'm not intending. And perception is reality and all that. Like, I'm sitting there uncomfortably saying I need to improve personally, right?
Yeah.
So why can't we all do that on a range of topics?
Because it's not something that is the norm, and we've got to normalize this. That's what I'm getting out of a lot of these conversations.
But it feels uncomfortable.
Wait, dude. I want to tell you what I'm taking from this conversation.
I was about to ask. Thank you.
Every conversation, I do the same thing, because that's what it's about. Like, we're having a conversation. What am I taking from it? So, the big thing that I'm taking is that low level to high level. And I think what has been difficult for me is, and so what was interesting about this is that I often have the high level conversations. I used to have lots of low level conversations. What was really hard was narrowing that gap between the high level to the low level conversation, right? Because there is a gap of what people feel comfortable, and it's like learning a different language. It's hard when you're speaking a new language. You have to think different. You have to communicate in different. It might be received in a different way because we come with different lenses, biases, conditionings, whatever it is, right? And in lots of ways, what is interesting from what you've said in that way about the low level, high level made it so clear for me. It's easy for me to have high level conversations because that's my world. It was really difficult for me to have low level. Do you know what that meant? It meant that I didn't fit in a lot of groups. It meant that I often, and it's happened not that long ago, that I actually get almost like a revolt. Hey, we don't need you here anymore, because it was too hard for them to bridge that gap. And I think that has become a big focus. And what I'm getting out of this today is, how can I continue to make those steps easier for those to be able to come from the low level, which might be just what they know, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a key point as well. This isn't about who's better. This isn't about it's education or anything. It's no. And that's the thing. I think too many people then start to go, oh, like I would hate someone to have heard that.
That's a low level and that's a high level.
I would hate someone to hear that and think that you're talking down, like, oh, you put yourself on a pedestal. Right? It's not that at all. It's a cognitive choice for you to want to learn more, to take that step. And I think as humans, we need to do that. So, and I completely agree. I think that is challenging as well, because there's a lot of people that don't want to talk like that out in public because they don't want it to be perceived as they're trying to put themselves on a pedestal, or they're saying that someone else doesn't have the capacity to. We all do, but we make a cognitive choice not to. Yeah. And as the saying goes, you know, it's easy to do just as much as it's easy not to do.
Yeah.
So,
So good.
Yeah.
Well, I personally want to thank you. I'm going to end this broadcast in a minute, but I just want to personally thank you because I love having conversations where we can literally back and forward, because then I get to grow even more and evolve even more. And for me, it's always, I actually really enjoyed the conversation around the vaccine. You know, I've had many thoughts over the years through that. And because I'm also one of those people that have had to really understand my body physically because it rejected so many things. And so for me, even considering taking the vaccine or not, like I love the way, the perspective that you brought today. And, you know, that really created an interesting conversation in my head. And I feel
you only been away from it 3 weeks, I think, when we had dinner. Remember, you were still coming out to dinner that night. It was like it was a challenge with the fatigue side just to be able to get through dinner as such, right?
So for me, it's so good to be able to have a conversation around things like that. What I love about this also, that you just had a willingness to come to the table and have this conversation, even though you really didn't know what you were coming to, but you know that with me, there's always something and we're going to go somewhere. And
I just knew there'd be the time where it was like, so my question is, and I'll be like, oh, here we go. Love it.
But here's the thing, like I do uncomfortable conversations because I realize that other people weren't doing those uncomfortable conversations. And so I kind of had to do it, right? I don't always enjoy it. But I loved our conversation because I know that there's no judgment on this. We're just trying to figure it out. And I think that that is what we need to be doing more of in public, so that others can now go, hey, guess what? That wasn't that hard when they had that conversation. That was okay. And I thank you for that willingness to do that today. Because for me, you know, I love the fact that we just went layers.
Karen Marie, it's always good fun. I love chatting with you. That's why when you reached out ages ago and said, hey, let's do this, I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And apologies it took me so long to get on here. And I rescheduled a few times and things like that. But, no, look, thank you very much. I love it as well. And I think there's been a lot of good discussions, a lot of good questions and breakthroughs. And I think, I mean, even for me personally, like I said before, I think it's also just that extra solidification that there's so much that we need to do personally ourselves to step up and lead the way in that respect. And I know I've got good takeaways, even just for myself. I know that it'll change my mindset for the rest of today alone, that I've got to go ahead and do these things first if I want to be able to do the rest with people as well. So that's, it's been great.
So what would be your final words? Is there anything you wanted to say that you haven't been able
to? There's probably a lot I'd want to say. No, no, there always is, and we could talk for hours. But I think for me, I mean, 4 words that I always live by is always grateful, never satisfied. I think it's something that I think we need to lead with more gratitude. I think when we lead with gratitude and we're able to, you know, I mean, even just a great lesson that I learned, when you don't agree with someone, rather than going, oh, but jumping down their throat, saying thank you, just taking a breath and just saying thank you, because, you know, like, I think that proactively encourages people to offer something more. And I think if we're always trying to suppress people and trying to say, no, don't say that, don't, and we always whinge and argue, so many people just back away and go, it's too hard, it doesn't feel good, etc. But if we turn around and encourage more people to talk about the right things and talk about and put opinions forward and ideas and thoughts, we get to solutions quicker, but we get to them in the right way. And I think leading with gratitude is that, like, when, you know, like, it's always like, hey, let's be grateful for what we've got. And some of the bad shit that happens in the world, I am so grateful that I have what I have and we are where we are and those type of things. But I'm also not satisfied. And I think we all should be doing that. We can always have more, be more, give more, you know, etc. But just know that, you know, even if you're in a really bad place in the world right now with a whole lot of things happening around you, it's still a better place than a global war 60 years ago, or it's better than being in medieval times. Like, we're so much better off. So I think we just need to always remain grateful, but never satisfied.
Oh, I love that. And on those amazing words, I'm ending that broadcast.
You're a legend. Thanks for your time.